"Get out of that seat. It's for VIPs, not the help." Those were the words Linda Richard Graves spat at the woman sitting quietly in seat 2A. He didn't know her name. He didn't care to check the manifest. All he saw was a black woman in a hoodie, sitting in a leather recliner worth more than his car, while a wealthy young man stood waiting in the aisle. Graves thought he was protecting the prestige of the flight. He thought he was exerting authority. He had no idea that the woman he was ordering to move wasn't just a passenger. She was the one who signed his paychecks. And by the time the engine started, his life was about to crash and burn. The rain at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey always felt colder than anywhere else. It was a sharp, biting drizzle that turned the tarmac into a slick mirror of grey steel and signal lights. For most people, Teterboro was just a name on a map, but for the top 0.1%, it was the gateway to the world, the busiest private aviation hub in the United States. Harper Calloway stepped out of the black SUV, pulling the hood of her oversized beige cashmere sweater up to shield her hair from the damp wind. At 34, Harper didn't look like the titan of industry she was. She didn't wear her net worth on her sleeve. There were no flashing diamond logos, no loud designer handbags that screamed for attention. She wore a pair of vintage denim jeans, clean white sneakers, and carried a worn leather messenger bag that contained a laptop holding sensitive data on a merger worth $4 billion. She thanked her driver, a stoic man named Thomas, who had been with her since her first startup, and walked toward the FBO, fixed base operator entrance of Atlantic Aviation. The glass doors slid open, hitting her with a blast of climate-controlled, lavender-scented air. The lounge was quiet, populated only by a few pilots scrolling on iPads, and a receptionist who looked bored out of her mind. Harper approached the desk. "Good morning. I'm here for the flight to London, tail number N182HC. The receptionist, a young woman named Sarah with heavily applied eyeliner, barely looked up from her phone. She scanned Harper's outfit, the hoodie, the lack of jewelry, the tired eyes, and made a snap judgment. In this world, appearance was currency, and Harper looked like she was overdrawn. "Staff entrance is around the back," Sarah said, thumb scrolling a social media feed. "Catering and cleaning crews need to check in at the service bay." Harper paused, her hand resting on the marble counter. She wasn't angry. She was used to this. It was the invisible cloak she wore. "I'm not catering. I'm the passenger." Sarah finally looked up, her eyebrows knitting together in confusion. She typed something into her computer, the keystrokes loud and aggressive. "N180HC. That's a Gulfstream GF100. We have a departure scheduled, but the lead passenger is a Mr. Roche." Harper sighed internally. Sebastian. Sebastian Roche was the son of her newest business partner. The merger required his father's signature, and part of the goodwill courting process involved flying the 20-something heir to London for a Fashion Week event. Harper had agreed to let him hitch a ride on her jet, a decision she was already regretting. "Mr. Roche is a guest," Harper corrected gently. "My name is Harper Calloway. I'm also on the flight." Sarah looked skeptical. She checked the screen again. The manifest was there, but she glossed over the details. She saw Roche, a prominent, old-money European name, and then she saw Calloway. It didn't ring a bell for her. To her, Calloway sounded like a generic placeholder. "Fine," Sarah said, printing a boarding pass with the enthusiasm of someone paying a parking ticket. "ID." Harper handed over her passport. Sarah glanced at it, handed it back without making eye contact, and pointed toward the glass doors leading to the tarmac. "Pilot is doing pre-flight. Just try not to get in the way until Mr. Roche arrives. He requested the cabin be prepped a certain way." "I'll keep that in mind," Harper murmured, taking her passport back. She walked out onto the tarmac, the wind whipping at her clothes. Ahead of her sat the beast, the Gulfstream G700. It was a masterpiece of aerodynamics, sleek and white, with a subtle silver stripe running down the fuselage. It was her latest acquisition, purchased 3 months ago through her holding company, Callaway Dynamics. She had only flown on it twice. She loved this plane. She loved the quiet hum of the APU, Auxiliary Power Unit, the smell of jet fuel, the promise of going anywhere. But as she reached the bottom of the air stairs, a tall, broad-shouldered man in a pristine pilot's uniform blocked her path. He had the jawline of a movie star and the eyes of a shark. He held a clipboard against his chest like a shield. This was Linda Richard Graves. He had been hired by the aircraft management company just 2 weeks ago. Harper hadn't met him personally yet. Her flight operations team handled staffing. All she knew was that he came highly recommended from a commercial airline, boasting 20 years of flight experience. "Hold it right there," Graves barked, his voice booming over the wind. Harper stopped on the first step, looking up. "Excuse me." "Where do you think you're going?" Graves looked down at her, his lip curling slightly. "Cleaning crew was supposed to be done an hour ago. We are wheels up in 40 minutes. You missed your window." Harper blinked, rain dripping from her hood. "I'm not the cleaning crew. I'm flying to London." Graves laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. It was a sharp, dismissive bark. "Listen, sweetheart. This is a G700, not a Greyhound bus. I don't have you on my VIP list. The only passenger I'm expecting is Mr. Sebastian Roche, and he demands absolute privacy. No tag-alongs, no assistants, and certainly no girlfriends." The insult was subtle but clear. He was implying she was a groupie. "Check the manifest again, Linda," Harper said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming colder. "My name is on it." Graves rolled his eyes, clearly annoyed that he had to deal with this in the rain. He checked the digital pad on his clipboard. He saw the name H. Callaway. "Callaway," he muttered. "Right, the assistant. Look, whatever arrangement you have with Mr. Roche, I don't care. But he specifically asked for the cabin to be set up for a solo traveler. He wants the conference table clear." He stepped aside, barely giving her enough room to pass. "Get on board. Sit in the back, in the jump seat or the divan in the rear crew rest, and stay out of sight. When Mr. Roche arrives, I don't want him to even know you're there. Do you understand? If you bother him, I will have you removed." Harper looked at him. She stared deep into his eyes, memorizing his face. She memorized the name tag, R. Graves. "I understand perfectly, Linda," she said. She walked up the stairs. The game had begun. The interior of the G700 was a sanctuary. The cabin was divided into 4 living areas, upholstered in cream leather and accented with walnut wood veneer. It smelled of expensive leather and fresh orchids, which were placed in a vase on the dining table. Harper walked past the galley, where a flight attendant named Jessica was frantically arranging a platter of exotic fruits. Jessica was young, likely new, and looked terrified. She barely nodded at Harper, too consumed with folding napkins into perfect swans. Harper moved to the main cabin area. This was her favorite spot. The seats here were the club suite configuration, 4 massive armchairs facing each other. Seat 2A was her preferred spot. It offered the best view of the left wing and the horizon. She sat down in 2A, dropping her wet messenger bag onto the plush carpet. She pulled off her hoodie, revealing a simple black t-shirt underneath. She leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment, letting the stress of the morning commute fade. "Excuse me?" The voice came from the cockpit door. It was Graves again. He had followed her onto the plane. He stood in the aisle, his cap tucked under his arm, his face flushed with irritation. I thought I gave you a specific instruction, Graves said, his voice tight. Harper opened her eyes. You said to get on board. I am on board. I told you to sit in the back, Graves hissed, gesturing toward the rear of the plane, past the dining area and the master bedroom to the small crew rest area near the lavatory. Seat 2A is the principal seat. That is for Mr. Roach. Mr. Roach can sit in 2B, Harper said calmly. Or 3A. Or the divan. There are 16 seats on this plane, Linda. I'm sure he'll find one he likes. Graves stepped closer, invading her personal space. He loomed over her, using his height to intimidate. Let me explain something to you. I am the Linda of this vessel. My word is law. When we are in the air, I am God. And I don't like insubordination from support staff. You are here to serve Mr. Roche, not to lounge around like you own the place. Harper smirked. The irony was so thick she could taste it. Is that so? You think I'm support staff? I think you're a liability, Graves retorted. I know your type. You latch on to rich men. You try to act like you belong in this world, but you don't. You're disrespectful. Now get up. Before Harper could respond, a commotion erupted at the front of the plane. Yo, Linda, where's the champagne? Sebastian Roach had arrived. He burst into the cabin like a hurricane of cologne and entitlement. He was wearing a bright yellow tracksuit that probably cost $5,000 but looked like pajamas. He had sunglasses on, even though it was raining, and inside the fuselage. Behind him trailed two assistants carrying Louis Vuitton duffel bags. Sebastian stopped when he saw Harper. He pulled his sunglasses down the bridge of his nose. Who the hell is this? Sebastian asked, pointing a manicured finger at her. Graves immediately pivoted, his demeanor changing from aggressive bully to obsequious servant in a split second. A fake smile plastered onto his face. Mr. Roche, welcome aboard, sir. An absolute honor to be flying you today. Graves bowed slightly. Apologies for the inconvenience. This is Miss Calloway. She's listed on the manifest as the additional passenger. I was just explaining to her that this seat is reserved for you. Sebastian looked at Harper with a mixture of confusion and disdain. He didn't recognize her. They had only spoken over Zoom once, and Harper had been wearing glasses and a blazer with her hair up. Now, with her hair natural and wearing a t-shirt, she looked like a stranger to him. Calloway. Sebastian frowned. Oh, right, the technical consultant from the firm. My dad said someone was coming to brief me on the London deal. He scoffed. I didn't think they'd send. Well, never mind. Sebastian waved his hand dismissively at Harper. Honey, move. I need to stretch my legs. I have a cramp from the car ride. Harper didn't move. She looked from Sebastian to Graves. There are plenty of seats, Sebastian, Harper said, using his first name intentionally. Sebastian stiffened. It's Mr. Roach to you, and I want that seat. He looked at Linda Graves. Linda, why is she still sitting there? I thought this was a private charter. Graves's face darkened. He turned back to Harper, his patience evaporated. He grabbed the armrest of her chair, leaning down so his face was inches from hers. I'm going to count to 3, Graves whispered menacingly. If you are not out of this seat and in the back of the plane, I will have security drag you off the tarmac. You will not ruin this flight for Mr. Roach. Do you hear me? Harper looked at the Linda's hand, gripping her leather chair. She looked at the veins popping in his neck. She looked at Sebastian, who was already pouring himself a glass of Dom Perignon from the galley bar, not even watching. You're making a mistake, Linda, Harper said softly. 1, Graves counted. A very big mistake. 2. Harper unbuckled her seatbelt. She stood up, slowly. She wasn't doing it because she was scared. She was doing it because she needed him to commit fully. She needed him to cross the line of no return. "Fine," Harper said. "I'll move." Graves straightened up, a smug look of victory on his face. He adjusted his tie. "Smart choice. Now, get to the back, and don't come out unless Mr. Roche asks for a refill." Harper picked up her bag. She walked past Sebastian, who didn't even acknowledge her existence, and past the terrified flight attendant, Jessica. She walked all the way to the rear of the plane, to the small, cramped jump seat near the baggage hold. She sat down in the dark corner. The leather here was just as nice, but the view was non-existent. She pulled out her phone. It was time to make a call. The engines whined to life, a high-pitched keen that vibrated through the floorboards. The Gulfstream began its taxi toward the runway. From her exile in the back, Harper could hear Sebastian's loud laughter echoing from the main cabin. "Linda, turn up the heat. It's freezing in here. And get this music changed. I want hip-hop, not this classical garbage," Sebastian shouted. "Right away, Mr. Roche." Graves's voice came over the intercom, dripping with sycophancy. Harper unlocked her phone. She had full bars. She navigated to her contacts and found a number labeled Marcus, CEO, Aviation, MGMT. Marcus Thorne was the CEO of Pegasus Elite Aviation, the company Harper paid millions of dollars annually to manage her aircraft, hire her pilots, and ensure her travel was seamless. She hit dial. "Harper," Marcus's voice answered on the first ring. He sounded surprised. "Everything okay? You should be wheels up in 10 minutes. "We're taxiing now," Harper said, her voice calm, but with a razor-sharp edge. "Marcus, I have a question about the crew you put on my plane today." "Linda Graves?" Marcus asked. "He's new, but his resume is stellar. 15,000 hours, former commercial Czech airman. Is there a problem? Is the landing rough?" "We haven't taken off yet," Harper said. "But Linda Graves seems to be under the impression that I am the catering staff. He just ordered me out of my seat, threatened to have security drag me off the plane, and exiled me to the jump seat so Sebastian Roche could have more legroom." There was a dead silence on the other end of the line. A silence so heavy it felt like the air pressure had dropped. "He did what?" Marcus whispered. "He told me that seat 2A is for VIPs, not the help. He also implied I was a gold digger." Harper looked at her fingernails. "I'm currently sitting next to the lavatory, Marcus, on my own $75 million jet." "I'm going to kill him," Marcus said, his voice trembling with rage. "Harper, I am so sorry. I had no idea. I will call the cockpit right now and—" "No," Harper interrupted. "Don't call him yet." "What?" "Harper, he's humiliating you." "I know, and I want him to feel the weight of that mistake. If you call him now, he'll just apologize to save his skin. He won't learn anything. And frankly, I want to see how far he goes." "What do you want me to do?" "Let us take off," Harper said. "Let him fly to London. It's a 6-hour flight. That gives him 6 hours to serve Sebastian Roche. 6 hours to think he's the king of the sky. When we land in Luton, I want you waiting on the tarmac. I want the entire board of Pegasus Aviation there, and I want his termination papers printed and ready on a silver platter." "Done," Marcus said instantly. "Consider it done. But Harper, are you sure you want to endure 6 hours of this?" "Oh, I'll be fine," Harper said, her eyes drifting toward the main cabin, where Sebastian was now shouting at the flight attendant about the ice cubes being too square. "I have some work to do. And Marcus?" "Yes." "Who is the flight attendant? Jessica?" "Yes, Jessica Miles. She's brand new, first week. She looks terrified. Make sure she knows she's not in trouble. She's just caught in the crossfire." "Understood." Harper hung up. The plane turned onto the active runway. The engines roared to full power. The G700 surged forward, pressing Harper into the small seat. As the nose lifted and the wheels left the wet New Jersey tarmac, Harper closed her eyes. Linda Graves was flying the plane, but Harper was flying the pilot. 20 minutes into the flight, the seatbelt sign pinged off. Harper opened her laptop and connected to the plane's high-speed Wi-Fi. She began drafting an email to Sebastian's father. Suddenly, the curtain separating the galley from the rear crew rest was ripped open. Graves stood there. He had put the plane on autopilot and come back to gloat. "Comfortable?" he sneered. "It's cozy," Harper said without looking up from her screen. "Good. Keep it that way." Graves leaned against the bulkhead. "Mr. Roche is asking for a foot massage. Since you're the only other person here besides Jessica, and Jessica is busy plating the caviar, I figured you could make yourself useful." Harper froze. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. "You want me to give Sebastian a foot massage?" she asked slowly. "He's the client." Graves shrugged. "You want this merger to go through, right? You're the consultant. Consult his feet. Make him happy. If he complains to his dad that the service on this flight was bad, it's going to reflect poorly on your little firm." Harper finally looked up. The level of disrespect was actually impressive. It was almost a work of art. "I don't think that's in my job description, Linda." Graves stepped forward, his face hardening. "I don't care what your job description is. On this plane, everyone pulls their weight. If you're useless, you're baggage, and I hate baggage." He pointed a finger at her. "Go out there. Ask him if he needs anything. Do it now." Harper stood up. She was tall, almost as tall as Graves when she stood straight. "Okay," she said. "I'll go talk to him." "Good girl." Graves smirked. Harper walked past him, brushing his shoulder. She walked into the main cabin. Sebastian was sprawled out in seat 2A, her seat, with his shoes off, feet propped up on the opposing chair. He was watching a movie on the large 4K monitor. He didn't hear her approach. "Sebastian," Harper said loudly. Sebastian jumped, pulling his headphones off. "Jesus, don't sneak up on me. What do you want? Did the Linda send you for the massage?" He wriggled his toes in his socks. "My arches are killing me." Harper stood in the center of the aisle. The flight attendant, Jessica, was freezing in the galley, watching with wide eyes. "I'm not here to rub your feet, Sebastian," Harper said, her voice projecting clearly over the hum of the jets. "I'm here to give you a heads up." "Heads up? About what?" "About the merger," Harper said. "I've just sent an email to your father." Sebastian laughed. "My dad? He loves me. He won't care what some random consultant says." "I'm sure he loves you," Harper agreed. "But he loves his business more. And he definitely loves the $4 billion injection capital my company is providing." Sebastian paused. The smile faltered slightly. "Your company? You work for the bank?" "No," Harper said, taking a step closer. "I don't work for the bank. I own the bank." The cabin went silent. "I am Harper Calloway, CEO of Calloway Dynamics. I am the one buying your father's company. And this plane?" She gestured around the cabin. "This isn't a charter. This is my plane. I own the seats, the carpet, the engines, and the champagne you're drinking." Sebastian's face went pale. He looked at the bottle of Dom Perignon in his hand. He looked at the seat he was sprawling in. You're the buyer," he stammered. "Yes, and you and Linda Graves have spent the last hour treating me like a servant." Harper's eyes were cold fire. "I suggest you put your shoes back on, Sebastian, because when we land in London, we're going to have a very different conversation." Just then, the cockpit door opened. Linda Graves stepped out, smiling. "Is she giving you any trouble, Mr. Roach?" I can put her back in her cage." Sebastian looked at Graves with horror. He frantically waved his hands, trying to silence the pilot. Shut up, you idiot!" Graves stopped, confused. "Excuse me?" "Shut your mouth!" Sebastian shrieked, scrambling to put his shoes on. "Do you know who this is?" Graves looked at Harper, then back at Sebastian. "It's the consultant, the help." "She's the billionaire!" Sebastian screamed. "She owns the damn plane." Graves froze. He turned his head slowly to look at Harper. Harper was leaning against the galley counter, arms crossed. She offered him a small, terrifying smile. "Hello again, Linda," she said. "How's the flight going?" The silence at 45,000 feet is usually peaceful. In a Gulfstream G700, the cabin altitude is kept low to reduce fatigue, and the noise isolation is state-of-the-art. But right now, the silence was suffocating. It was heavy, thick, and filled with the absolute terror of two men who realized they had just tried to bully a Titan. Linda Richard Graves stood frozen in the aisle. His face, usually flushed with the arrogance of command, had drained of all color. He looked like a wax statue, melting under a heat lamp. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The god of the sky had just realized he was standing on someone else's cloud. I don't understand," Graves stammered, his voice cracking. "The manifest, it just said Calloway. It didn't say owner." "It didn't need to," Harper said, her voice dangerously calm. She didn't yell. She didn't need to raise her voice to be heard anymore. She simply uncrossed her arms and pointed to seat 2A, the seat Sebastian was currently shrinking into. "Get up, Sebastian." Sebastian scrambled out of the chair as if it were on fire. He nearly tripped over his own expensive sneakers. Yes, of course. Miss Calloway, please, take it. I had no idea. If you had known I was rich, you would have treated me with respect." Harper finished his sentence, stepping forward and sinking into the leather seat she had paid for. She smoothed the armrest. "That's the problem, isn't it? You only respect people you think can do something for you. The moment you thought I was an assistant, I became furniture." She turned her gaze to Graves, who was still hovering, looking like he wanted to jump out of the emergency exit. "Linda," Harper said, "why are you still in my cabin?" Graves swallowed hard. "Miss Calloway, I want to apologize. There has been a severe misunderstanding. I was just trying to ensure Mr. Roach, our guest, had the best experience. I was following protocol for VIP privacy. I didn't mean any offense to you personally." "You called me a liability," Harper recited, counting off on her fingers. "You called me a gold digger. You told me to get back in my cage. You threatened to have security drag me off my own plane." "I was under stress," Graves tried, sweat beading on his forehead. "The weather in Teterboro, the schedule pressure." "Go back to the cockpit, Linda," Harper cut him off, her eyes turning back to her laptop screen. "Fly the plane. That is the only thing I am paying you to do right now, and do it well, because if I feel so much as a bump on landing, your severance package goes from 0 to negative." Graves looked at Sebastian for help, but the young heir turned his back, pretending to examine the wood grain on the wall. Graves was alone. "Yes, Mom," Graves whispered. He retreated into the cockpit, closing the door softly. Inside the flight deck, Graves slumped into the left seat. His first officer, a younger man named David, who had been silent during the exchange, looked over. "Everything okay back there, Rick?" David asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse," Graves muttered, his hands shaking as he gripped the yoke. "I just told the owner of the plane to give the client a foot massage." David's eyes went wide. "You did what? To Harper Calloway? I didn't know it was her. Rick, her name is on the tail of the plane, N180HC, Harper Calloway," David whispered furiously. "How could you not know?" Graves stared out at the dark blue sky. The horizon was curving away from him. He had spent 20 years building a reputation as a pilot who could handle VIPs, who could command a cabin. In 20 minutes, he had incinerated it all. Back in the cabin, the atmosphere had shifted from hostile to awkwardly obsequious. Sebastian was now sitting in the jump seat, the very same one Harper had been exiled to, because he was too terrified to sit in the main cabin area without permission. "Ms. Calloway?" Sebastian's voice was small. Can I get you anything? Water? Champagne?" Harper didn't look up. "No, Sebastian, but you can apologize to Jessica." Sebastian blinked. "Who?" "Jessica." Harper pointed to the flight attendant in the galley. Jessica was standing there, trying to make herself invisible, witnessing the power struggle of the century. Sebastian looked at the flight attendant. He had snapped his fingers at her earlier. He had complained about the ice. "I'm sorry," Sebastian muttered toward the galley. Jessica nodded, her eyes wide, looking at Harper with a mix of awe and gratitude. "Jessica," Harper called out gently. "Yes, Miss Calloway?" Jessica hurried over. "You're doing a great job," Harper smiled. "Please bring me a sparkling water with lime. And then, I want you to go sit in the other club suite seat and relax for the rest of the flight. We don't need service." "But, Mom, I have to." "Sit down, Jessica. That's an order." As Jessica timidly sat in the luxury leather chair opposite the Billionaire, and Sebastian sat in the cramped crew seat in the back, the hierarchy of the world had been righted. The rest of the flight passed in a heavy, ominous silence, the engines humming a funeral dirge for Richard Graves's career. The Atlantic Ocean was behind them, and the Gulf Stream G700 was now cruising over the dark, rolling landscape of the United Kingdom. Inside the cabin, the atmosphere had shifted from the volatile energy of a confrontation to the heavy, suffocating silence of a courtroom waiting for a verdict. For the last 4 hours, the $75 million aircraft had felt less like a luxury vessel and more like a flying prison cell. Harper Calloway sat in seat 2A, the seat she had paid for, the seat she owned. She was no longer working on her laptop. Instead, she was staring out the window, watching the last bruised purple streaks of sunset fade into the grey English twilight. She was calm, her breathing steady, her posture relaxed. She was the eye of the storm. In stark contrast, Sebastian Roche was unraveling. He had spent the majority of the flight exiled to the crew jump seat near the galley, a small, upright chair designed for short durations, not transatlantic crossings. His legs, usually sprawled out in first-class suites, were cramped. His bright yellow tracksuit, which had seemed so loud and confident in New Jersey, now looked ridiculous. He kept glancing at his phone, checking for a signal that wasn't there, his thumbs hovering over the screen, as if composing apology texts that he knew would never be sent. Every time he looked toward the main cabin, he saw the back of Harper's head. He saw the woman he had dismissed as the help. He saw the person who held his financial future in her hands. The silence from her direction was louder than any scream. "Ms. Calloway?" Sebastian whispered, his voice cracking. The bravado was entirely gone. Harper didn't turn around. She didn't even shift in her seat. "Yes, Sebastian. I just wanted to ask, when we land, is my car still coming? I mean, for the hotel?" Harper took a sip of her sparkling water. The ice clinked softly against the crystal glass. "We'll see." It was a non-answer, and it terrified him more than a direct refusal. Up in the cockpit, the tension was even worse. Linda Richard Graves was sweating through his uniform. He had the climate control set to 68 degrees, but he felt like he was sitting in a sauna. He was flying the plane, but his mind was racing through 1,000 different scenarios, trying to construct a defense for what had happened on the ground in Teterboro. She didn't identify herself, Graves thought, his internal monologue frantic and repetitive. That's my angle. I'll stick to that. I was protecting the asset. I was ensuring the privacy of the high-net-worth individual. I'm a veteran pilot. They won't fire me for being too cautious. I can spin this. I can make her look like the unreasonable one. He glanced at his first officer, David. Usually, by this point in a flight, they would be chatting about their layover plans, maybe discussing which pub to hit in Luton. But David hadn't said a word to him in 3 hours, other than required flight call-outs. "Top of descent," Graves announced, his voice sounding hollow in the headset. "Requesting flight level 240. "Checked," David replied coldly. "London Control clears us to 240. Graves tried to break the ice. "Listen, Dave, about earlier, I'm going to need you to write a report backing me up. Just say she was being disruptive during pre-flight. If we stick together, management will overlook it." David slowly turned his head. He looked at Graves with a mixture of disbelief and disgust. "I'm not writing anything for you, Rick," David said, his voice flat. "You told the owner of the airplane to give a passenger a foot massage. You're on your own." Graves gripped the yoke tighter, his knuckles turning white. "I am the Linda. I expect loyalty." "You lost my loyalty when you bullied a woman because you thought she was poor," David said, turning back to the instruments. "I'm flying the plane. That's it." A chime pinged in the cockpit. It was a text message via the ACR system, the digital link between the plane and the ground operations. Graves looked at the screen. "MSG from HQ. Pegasus Ops. Text. Proceed direct to stand 4. Do not deplane packs. Wait for company rep." Graves swallowed hard. Company rep? Usually they just sent a handling agent. Why would a company representative be at the stand? "Ladies and gentlemen," Graves said into the PA system, forcing his voice to sound breezy and professional. "We are beginning our initial descent into London Luton Airport. The weather is, typical London rain. We should be on the ground in 20 minutes. It has been a pleasure having you on board." He clicked the mic off. He felt sick. The Gulf Stream dipped its nose, slicing through the cloud layer. The cabin darkened as they entered the gloom of the British weather. Rain began to streak across the oval windows. Harper watched the lights of London twinkle below. She pressed the call button. A moment later, Jessica, the young flight attendant, appeared. She looked pale and exhausted, her eyes rimmed with red. She had spent the flight terrified that she would be fired by association. "Yes, Miss Calloway?" Jessica asked, her voice trembling. "Jessica," Harper said gently. "Sit down." "Mum, I need to prepare the cabin for landing. I have to collect the glasses and leave them," Harper ordered softly. "The cleaning crew will handle it. I want you to sit in the divan, strap yourself in, and close your eyes. You've had a long day." "But Linda Graves said—" "Linda Graves is not in charge anymore," Harper said, her eyes meeting Jessica's with a reassuring intensity. "I am. Sit down." Jessica nodded, a tear escaping her eye. She sat on the plush divan opposite Harper and buckled the belt. For the first time in 6 hours, she exhaled. The landing gear deployed with a heavy thud click, the sound vibrating through the floorboards. The flaps whined as they extended, slowing the aerodynamic beast for its final approach. Graves was flying manually now. He was channeling every ounce of his 20 years of experience into this landing. He needed it to be perfect. He needed to remind everyone, Harper, the first officer, the company, that he was an aviator of the highest caliber. "Smooth," he told himself. "Keep it smooth. Show them you're indispensable." The runway lights rushed up to meet them. The G700 floated over the threshold. Graves flared the nose gently, bleeding off speed, waiting for the tarmac to rise. Touchdown. It was imperceptible. The wheels kissed the ground so softly that the only indication they had landed was the deployment of the spoilers and the roar of the reverse thrusters. It was a masterpiece of a landing. A grease job. "Nice landing," David muttered, almost against his will. "I know what I'm doing," Graves snapped, regaining a shred of his arrogance as the plane slowed to a taxi speed. They exited the runway and turned toward the signature flight support terminal. The rain was coming down harder now, blurring the lights of the airport into streaks of amber and white. "Ground control," Graves radioed. "Gulfstream, November 18, 0 Hotel Charlie, clear of the active. Request taxi to parking." 0 Hotel Charlie, the controller replied. "Taxi to stand 4. You have a reception team waiting." "Reception team?" Graves frowned. He guided the jet around the corner of the terminal building, the powerful landing lights sweeping across the wet apron, and then he saw them. Usually, a private arrival meant a single marshal with glowing wands and maybe a fuel truck. Tonight, the tarmac looked like a scene from a government motorcade. There were 6 black SUVs lined up in a phalanx, their red taillights reflecting off the wet pavement like blood. Standing in front of them, huddled under large black umbrellas against the wind, was a group of stern-looking men in trench coats. Graves squinted through the rain-lashed windshield. He recognized the tall man in the center. Even from this distance, the posture was unmistakable. It was Marcus Thorne, the CEO of Pegasus Elite Aviation, the man who ran the entire global fleet from Zurich. He never came to landings. Never. "Oh God," Graves whispered, the blood draining from his face. "That's not a handling agent, Rick," David said quietly, unbuckling his harness. "That's a firing squad." Graves slammed on the brakes, bringing the jet to a halt at the designated mark. He cut the engines. The hum of the avionics faded, replaced by the sound of rain drumming on the fuselage. He sat there for a moment in the dark cockpit, his hands shaking on his lap. The perfect landing didn't matter. The years of service didn't matter. He looked out at the line of cars, at the grim faces waiting in the rain, and he realized with a sickening lurch that he hadn't just flown a plane to London. He had flown himself to his own execution. The cool English air rushed into the cabin. Harper stepped onto the stairs. Marcus Thorne was waiting at the bottom. He looked furious. He wasn't looking at Harper. He was glaring up at the door behind her. "Harper," Marcus said, extending a hand to help her down the last step. "I am so incredibly sorry." "It's not your fault, Marcus," Harper said, shaking his hand. "But we need to fix it." "It's already in motion," Marcus said grimly. Graves came down the stairs slowly, followed by a bewildered David, the first officer, Jessica, and a trembling Sebastian. When Graves reached the tarmac, he saw Marcus. He froze. Marcus Thorne was a legend in the aviation industry, a man who managed fleets for royalty and Fortune 500 CEOs. "Mr. Thorne," Graves said, his voice weak. "Sir, I can explain." "Save it," Marcus snapped. The venom in his voice made Graves flinch. "I listened to the cockpit voice recorder data we streamed during the flight. I heard everything. Get back in your cage. The help!" Marcus stepped closer to Graves. "You represent Pegasus Elite Aviation. We charge our clients $12,000 an hour for perfection, and you treated the owner of the asset like a stray dog." "I thought she was unauthorized," Graves protested, trying one last Hail Mary. "Security protocol." "She is the owner," Marcus shouted, his voice echoing off the fuselage. "And even if she wasn't, even if she was the cleaning lady, you do not treat people like that on my watch." One of the men in suits stepped forward. He handed an envelope to Graves. "Linda Graves," the man said formally. "This is your notice of immediate termination for cause. Gross misconduct, insubordination, and violation of passenger dignity protocols." Graves took the envelope, his hands shaking so hard he almost dropped it. "You're firing me? For one bad flight?" "We're not just firing you," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "I am filing a report with the Professional Standards Board. I'm contacting every management company in the database, NetJets, FlexJet, Vista. They will all know exactly why you were let go. You won't fly a G700 again, Richard. You'll be lucky to fly a cargo prop plane in Alaska." Graves looked around. The ground crew was watching. The other pilots in the FBO were watching. His career was evaporating in real time. Meanwhile, Sebastian tried to sneak toward the waiting luxury van. "Sebastian," Harper called out. Sebastian froze. He turned slowly. "I haven't forgotten about you," Harper said, walking over to him. She pulled out her phone. "I spoke to your father while we were over the Atlantic." You did?" Sebastian squeaked. "Yes. He was very interested to hear how his son treats business partners. He was especially interested to hear that you tried to make me give you a foot massage." Sebastian's face crumpled. "Please don't tell me he cancelled the allowance." "Better," Harper smiled. "He's still signing the merger. He knows I'm a professional. But he's removing you from the board of directors. And he instructed me to tell you that you are finding your own way back to New York. Commercial, economy class." Sebastian looked at the sleek private jet, then at the terminal building where the commercial flights departed. "Economy? But I have bad legs." "Walk it off," Harper said. The touchdown at London Luton Airport was flawless. Linda Richard Graves guided the $75 million Gulfstream G700 onto the wet runway with a gentleness that belied the panic rising in his chest. As the reverse thrusters roared, slowing the massive jet, Graves wiped a bead of cold sweat from his temple. Inside the cockpit, the silence was heavy. His first officer, David, was staring straight ahead, refusing to look at him. "David," Graves said, his voice tight. "When we park, I'll handle the door. I want to talk to her alone first. Smooth things over." David slowly unbuckled his harness. The metal click sounded like a gunshot. "I can't do that, Rick." "What do you mean?" "I'm the Linda." "Not for long," David said quietly. "I saw the message from HQ. They know what happened. I'm not going down with you." Graves turned away, nausea churning in his stomach. He guided the jet toward the signature flight support terminal. Usually, a single ramp agent would be waiting to marshal them in. But as the floodlights swept over the apron, Graves's heart stopped. It wasn't a ramp agent. It was a tribunal. Standing on the rain-slicked tarmac was a line of 6 black SUVs, their engines idling, red taillights reflecting off the wet asphalt. Standing in front of them, huddled in a wool trench coat against the biting wind, was Marcus Thorne, the CEO of Pegasus Elite Aviation. Flanking him were the company's chief legal officer and 2 imposing men from corporate security. Graves cut the engines. The cockpit went dark as the systems spun down. "Oh God," he whispered. He stood up, smoothed his uniform, and put on his hat. He needed to look authoritative. He needed to look like he was in charge. He opened the cockpit door and stepped into the cabin. Harper Calloway was already standing by the exit. She had pulled her hoodie up, looking just as she had in New Jersey, unassuming and calm. Sebastian Roche was hiding in the back, scrolling frantically on his phone. "Ms. Calloway," Graves said, blocking the aisle with a forced smile. "Before we deplane, I'd like to offer a formal apology. My security measures were perhaps too rigid, but I assure you, my priority was the safety of the flight." Harper didn't look at his face. She looked at the 4 gold stripes on his shoulder. "Open the door, Richard," she said. "Please, if we could just discuss this privately." "You are not the Linda anymore." Harper cut him off, her voice ice cold. "You are just a man in my way. Open the door." Defeated, Graves turned and punched the code. The air stairs motorized downward, letting in the cold, damp English air. Graves descended first, intending to greet his boss with confidence. "Mr. Thorne, what a surprise. We made excellent time." Marcus Thorne didn't move. He didn't extend a hand. He stared at Graves with a look of absolute disgust. "I wasn't in London, Richard," Marcus said. "I flew in from Paris the moment I received the audio alert from the cabin." Graves froze. "Audio. The cabin records everything," the legal counsel said, stepping forward with a tablet. "Would you like to hear?" She tapped the screen. Graves's voice, arrogant and loud, echoed across the quiet tarmac. "Get back in your cage. Consult his feet. Make him happy. If you're useless, you're baggage." The color drained from Graves's face. The fuel truck driver nearby stopped working to listen. "You told the owner of this aircraft to give a passenger a foot massage," Marcus said, his voice shaking with rage. "You called her the help. You threatened to have her dragged off her own property." "I didn't know," Graves pleaded, pointing a trembling finger at Harper as she descended the stairs. She was wearing a hoodie. She refused to identify herself properly. It was a misunderstanding. "Because you have a manifest," Marcus roared, stepping into Graves's personal space. "It is your job to know. And even if she was a stowaway, you do not treat human beings with that level of degradation." The lawyer handed Graves a wet envelope. "Termination for cause. Gross misconduct. We are filing a report with the CAA and the FAA immediately." Graves clutched the paper. "You're firing me? Over one bad day? I have a mortgage. I have kids." "You should have thought about your kids before you decided to bully a woman because you thought she was powerless," Harper said, stepping up to the group. "Character is how you treat people who can do nothing for you. You failed." "Hand over your credentials," Marcus ordered. "What?" "Your ID. And your epaulets." "Not the epaulets," Graves whispered, tears stinging his eyes. "Please, not in front of the crew." "You didn't mind humiliating her in front of the crew," Marcus said coldly. "Give them to me." With shaking hands, Graves unbuttoned the gold stripes from his shoulders, the symbol of 20 years of authority. He handed them to Marcus. Stripped of his rank, standing in the rain in a plain white shirt, he looked small. He looked finished. Security took his arm and escorted him away toward the perimeter fence. As Graves disappeared into the shadows, Sebastian Roche emerged from the plane. He had pulled his yellow hood up and was trying to sneak toward a waiting Mercedes van, dragging his heavy Louis Vuitton bags. He kept his head down, hoping to be invisible. "Mr. Roche," Harper called out. Sebastian froze. He turned around, flashing a terrified, charming smile. "Harper, Miss Calloway. Wow, intense stuff with the pilot. Glad you handled that. Anyway, my car is here, so I'll just head to the hotel." He reached for the door handle of the Mercedes. Click. The driver inside locked the doors. Sebastian pulled on the handle. It wouldn't budge. "That's not your car," Harper said. "What do you mean? It's the company car. My dad always sends it." Harper pulled out her phone. "I have your father on the line." She hit the speaker button. "Papa!" Sebastian squeaked. "You are a disgrace." The voice of Henri Roche boomed from the phone, loud and furious. Sebastian flinched. "Papa, listen. It was a mix-up. She didn't look like an investor. She looked like a human being," Henri shouted. "I sent you to London to represent our family, to show we have class. Instead, you demand massages. You treat business partners like servants. You are a spoiled child. I'm sorry. I'll apologize. It is too late, Henri said. I have removed you from the board of directors. Your corporate credit cards are cancelled. The London apartment is locked. Do not call me until you have earned a paycheck with your own hands. The line went dead. Sebastian stood in the rain, staring at the phone. He looked at the luxury van as it started its engine and drove away without him. But I have no money, Sebastian whimpered. I have nowhere to go. Harper walked over to him. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a single, crumpled 10-pound note. She held it out. There is a train station about a mile down that service road. She pointed into the darkness. This will cover a ticket to the city, economy class. Sebastian stared at the money. The humiliation was total. He snatched the bill, his face burning red. He grabbed the handles of his heavy designer bags and began the long, wet trudge toward the public road, the wheels clattering loudly on the asphalt. Harper watched him go, then turned to the last person remaining. Jessica, the young flight attendant, was standing by the nose gear, shivering violently. She was clutching her purse, tears mixing with the rain on her face. She was certain she was next. Jessica, Harper said softly. Jessica jumped. Miss Calloway, I'll pack my things. I'm sorry I didn't stop them. I was scared. Harper turned to Marcus. Marcus, give me your coat. Marcus immediately shed his heavy trench coat. Harper took it and wrapped it around the trembling young woman. You were scared, Harper said gently, but you were kind. When Graves told you to ignore me, you checked on me. When Sebastian snapped his fingers at you, you kept your dignity. That takes character. Jessica looked up, confused. Am I fired? Harper smiled. Marcus, Jessica is now the lead cabin attendant for my personal fleet. Double her salary, effective today, and pay for her leadership training. Jessica gasped, covering her mouth. Ms. Calloway, thank you. Thank you so much. Go get in the car, Harper said. It's warm inside. As Jessica was ushered into the lead SUV, Harper stood alone for a moment. She looked up at the tail of her jet, N180HC. It was just a machine, but tonight it had been a courtroom. She turned to Marcus. Find me a new pilot, someone who knows that class isn't about the uniform, it's about the heart underneath. Understood, Marcus said. Harper climbed into the back of her car. She pulled her hood up, closed her eyes, and smiled. The invisible billionaire had finally been seen. And that is how you serve a cold dish of karma. Linda Graves and Sebastian Roche learned the hardest lesson of their lives that night. Never judge a book by its cover, because you never know who is really signing the checks. They thought their status gave them the right to belittle others. But Harper Calloway proved that true power doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be confident in who it is. Graves lost his wings, and Sebastian lost his fortune, all because they lacked basic human decency. It's a powerful reminder for all of us. Character isn't about who you are when you're winning. It's about how you treat the people who can do nothing for you. If you enjoyed this story of high-flying justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. I want to know, have you ever been underestimated by someone? Tell me your story in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and stay humble.